right now.
Okay.
I think we are live, if I am not
Bonjour.
mistaken.
Yep.
And we'll go here. Yeah. So we are, I think. Hold on real quick, because you don't.
Oh, when I chat, it's going to come up as you.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me come over here and see. Continue. Oh, yeah, we are. We're
Yep.
good.
All right. Do you want to open us up with some words of wisdom, maybe some prayer?
Yeah. Yeah. So, as always, I want to call in our ancestors, acknowledge Creator, acknowledge our spirits, acknowledge our ancestors, and allow them to work through us, allow their wisdom to permeate the space, that we sit with our grandmothers and their grandmothers, and that knowledge and that wisdom guide us through the work that we are trying to do with this council, and with our Men's Warrior Society as well, that we're guided in a good way to do good work for our community and our people.
I love that. Miigwech. Yeah, and I am bringing that same energy and, calling in our grandmothers. I think that's incredibly important. Recognizing our ancestors, recognizing the people that are here with us this evening. I see the chat's kind of going a little bit. My name is Jennifer. I'm going to be not visible today because I have bronchitis and I look, just don't want to see it. So,
Right.
but yeah, if you, so do you want to introduce yourself, Maya?
Uh-oh, I'm hearing like some.
Well, I'm sorry. Do you want to introduce yourself? Can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, it's sounding a little bit robotic.
Oh, weird.
Hey, you guys in the comments, are you guys hearing okay, or is it sounding a little bit like off, like mechanical kind of?
If you guys could just post. Oh, okay. Thunder says we sound good. And
Oh, that sounds better.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
just seeing if you wanted to. Thanks, guys. We appreciate that. We just want to see if you want to introduce yourself before we kind of get going.
If I wanted to
Introduce yourself.
like, it's so cutting out. I'm going to assume you said introduce myself. So hi,
Yes.
everyone. Maya. I am the board chair for the Woven with Resilience Native Women's Council. Welcome. We like to create this space for our community, for our fellow women, to look at ways to address and improve and advance our people on multiple realms, multiple levels, having to do with all types of things like philanthropy and education and direct action and all that good stuff. So it is a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy that you guys are all here with us to join in the conversation.
Yeah, it's really great. So are we going to do you think we should start with our closed practice topic, or would you like to talk about MMIW first, since today is October 4th, as we had talked earlier. Canada celebrates October 4th as Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Two-Spirit, Non-Binary, and Men. And that's a little bit different than what the U.S. does. They celebrate that on May 5th, but we are standing in solidarity with our Canadian brothers and sisters.
Correct. Yeah, I think before we do get into the topics, I just wanted to, since we did our our acknowledgement of our ancestors, I also want to acknowledge one of our governing board members who
Oh,
is,
yes.
visibly absent. So Mia, our thoughts are with her as she, deals with some personal things that are going on in her life, but we love her very much. And we support her completely and wholeheartedly. Her chair is here and waiting for her at the table when she's ready to return. So we just ask that everyone else also put tobacco down, keep her and her family in prayer, and lift her up as much as possible. We love you a lot, and we're here if you need anything, sister, if you're listening out there.
Yes, definitely prayers and so much love to you, Mia, and your family.
Yeah. And so with that, we can actually go into our discussion about MMIW. Like you said, Canada observes the 4th of, the 4th of October as a day of action or day of awareness to the issue of MMIW. So we can get into that. And I think you have a video prepared. You want to discuss a little bit before you do.
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about it before we actually show it. I think this is something that has been circulating on TikTok and other, of course, social media platforms. This is understanding how the laws encourage violence, a history of MMIW. So this is posted on YouTube from the Nonviolence International New York channel. They talk about 5,500, and really it's closer to 6,000 Indigenous women and girls go missing or murdered every year. We need to change the laws that govern the Indigenous tribes because they make it easier for people to attack Indigenous people. And understanding the history of the creation of the laws and how they affect the people is important for productive and appropriate change. So I would really like to share my screen at this point. This is a 6.5-minute video. I think it has some good information for us. And so I will start this right now. Give me a second. It's giving me all kinds of tips on how to share my screen. I love it.
We love all the help we can get.
I know, no kidding. So yeah, that's what I want. My entire
Do we have in here in the resilience in here? Oh, okay. You ready to go? I was just about to read off who we have in our comment section.
Yep, I am ready.
We
Can you
love
guys
the support in here.
can you see the screen, Maya?
I can. Yes.
All right, excellent. We are going to watch it. Here we go. Hopefully let me know if there's anything with audio.
Everyone knows Disney's Pocahontas, a movie that highlights some amazing portrayals of connections to nature, with a strong female protagonist. While inspiring, this was not the case. Pocahontas, also known as Matoaka, in reality was taken from her tribe and held for ransom as a bartering tool by English colonists at just 16 years old. To protect her tribe, she agreed to marry an Englishman as her last effort to keep the peace. She was then stripped of her culture, forced into Christianity, and murdered not long after bearing a child. This disregard for her life can be traced back to the basic prejudice against Indigenous lives, manifesting as a complete disregard for the value of Indigenous lives that the colonizers brought to this land from the beginning. This happened over 400 years ago, yet even now, Indigenous women and girls are still going missing, and not much is being done to stop it. Over 5,500 Indigenous women and girls are missing and murdered in the United States and Canada every year. And more than 84%, 1.5 million Indigenous women experience violence in their lifetimes, because the laws that were set up to govern them reflected those same inhumane attitudes and values which the tribal governments had to abide by. They achieved this by making the tribes both sovereign, meaning they had their own government, and dependent, which means they were also controlled by federal law. Additionally, the U.S. government created barriers preventing justice for crimes committed on tribal land and to tribal citizens, which were hidden in jurisdictions of local, state, federal, and tribal law. Many of these laws are still in use today and directly relate back to what is happening to these women and girls. First, The Major Crimes Act of 1885 mandated that all violent crimes committed on tribal lands were to be prosecuted by the federal government, which means that the U.S. government doesn't need to prioritize the tribes' needs, and that the tribes cannot make decisions without the U.S. government. Then there was Public Law 280 of 1953, which gave partial or total control to the state over tribes within their boundaries. This was a response to the tribes' pleas, but instead of giving control back to the indigenous people, they gave the states control over their judicial and criminal system. It's important to remember that up until this point, the indigenous people didn't have a guaranteed right to vote until the 1970s. They had no say over who was in the government that was controlling them. The third law is the Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968. This law states that Native governments cannot prosecute for more than $5,000 in fines and 1 year of jail time a person of their own tribe, even for a violent crime. They can't prosecute a non-Native person at all. They have to hand the case back to the U.S. government. By comparison, the average prison sentence for rape handed down by state or federal courts ranges from 8 to 13 years. This law was eventually combined with a new law called the Tribal Law and Order Act of 2010, which included 7 improvements to the Indian Civil Rights Act. These improvements finally gave indigenous tribes the ability to prosecute criminals, but only of indigenous descent. These laws still prevented significant consequences for non-Native perpetrators. While these laws allowed prosecution of non-Native suspects, it still had to be done at the state and federal level, and those courts rarely followed through. As a result, these criminals targeted indigenous women living in these areas because they knew they could get away with their crimes in those jurisdictions. Because of strict laws preventing high-stakes consequences to non-Native persons, non-Native perpetrators target indigenous women specifically living in these areas. They know they can get away with their crimes in those jurisdictions. In 2018 alone, the Urban Indian Health Institute reported 5,712 missing indigenous women and girls, with only 116 of them registered in the DOJ database, while the other 5,596 cases were turned into cold cases. The cases that were registered and transferred to state or federal court took years to get any form of justice, with only that 3-year sentence. The same as a petty crime. Everyone deserves the right to safety. The creation of a better, safer environment and livelihood is important. The U.S. needs to start prioritizing the lives of these women. Tribal jurisdictions need full authority and resources in order to protect their people, and the determination of a crime being fully charged and prosecuted should be the same for non-Natives on and off of their lands.
My mother's child dances in darkness and sings hidden songs by the light of the moon, and watches the stars and renames the planets and dreams she can sing the song in the room. I am my mother's savage daughter, the one who runs barefoot, cursing sharp stones. I am my mother's savage daughter. I will not cut my hair. I will not lower my voice. We are all brought forth out of darkness into this world through blood and through pain, and deep in our bones the old songs are waiting. We are our mother's savage daughters, the ones who run barefoot, cursing sharp stones. We are our mother's savage daughters, who will not cut our hair. We will not lower our voice.
Okay, I think did you hear that okay?
Yes. Well, I did. I think everybody else did as well. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. There's a lot of stuff there. I think it's really important to understand the laws that are currently in place that really hinder us, from being able to fully look at not just our communities, but who's coming into our communities, and then how we can, set up safety nets and protections for our most vulnerable populations. It's really interesting, how we see the progression through that video, all the way back to the mid 1800s. This began. This has been, I'm just going to say it's been a systematic genocide on our people. And the laws that they have created and enacted are not doing much to assist us in, moving away from that. So.
Correct. I think it's important to note too how, it's these types of behaviors, right? And the culture around missing and murdered Indigenous women is romanticized in the way that it is, right? And why it's romanticized in the way that it is, how that plays a part in the recurrence, right? The recurrence of it, and the fact that it's still very prevalent, to the point where a lot of times our own people, our own sisters, our own brothers, they don't find an issue with maybe certain films or cartoon, you know what I mean? What have you? What they see as representation is really indoctrination, is what it is. So.
Right. And so while they're, indoctrinating us with their laws and their systems and their best practices and their beliefs and their perspectives, we're out here trying to make sure that our young women, especially like I think about my daughter who's 15. I have a niece who's 15, recently moved out to the state of Washington, and she has to walk about a quarter of a mile to the school. They can actually see the school from her apartment building, but we're having conversations about how you protect yourself. Using public transit, how you make sure that you stay in touch with everyone. And then, we're talking about, her mom is talking about getting her into some self-defense courses. Like, is that the reality for everybody in this country? Do we all raise our women in that way? And I know that, we talk about rape culture, knowing no boundaries, but if we're being attacked 3 times as much as any other demographic, and we're 10 times more likely to die, it just begs the question of who's next. Is it me? Is it my daughter? Is it my niece? Who is it going to be? And no matter who it is, it's one of our Indigenous sisters.
Exactly. I was just about to say, well, if we're judging by the statistics, right, it is an Indigenous woman. It is a Native woman. And the problem with that is that it's so prevalent and so frequent among our Indigenous women because of that idea that Indigenous women are disposable, right? From the very onset of colonization here, from first contact, our women have always been viewed as disposable, not as important. They figure, oh well, I'll just pick up this Native girl, no one's gonna miss her, or she's she's doped up, or she's an addict, right? She's strung out, or whatever it is, she's a sex worker, whatever the case may be, right?
Yep, or houseless on the streets with mental health issues that have gone unchecked, or or she's just struggling.
Absolutely. And they dehumanize us to a point where it's almost justified to them, right? They justify the violence against us based on what they perceive to be, just the bottom of society, right? The undesirable attributes that might be a circumstance of someone's life, right? There's always extenuating circumstances, specifically when you're talking about a group of people that have undergone generational traumas, right? There are always those extenuating circumstances, but they deem them as undesirable attributes that warrant the annihilation, the murder, and the homicide, the violence against our women and our girls and our men, because our men are not void of this issue. That's not like it doesn't affect them. It affects our men as well.
Yes, it most definitely affects our men. I mean, in fact, our men have been disenfranchised. That was a political move to further genocide within Native communities. They dismantled the family unit. That's one of the fastest ways to, try to kill a nation. They dismantled the family unit, they stole the babies, and they made the men obsolete. And that's not the case. I mean, that's what they tried to do. They jailed them for trying to hunt and fish and provide for their families and do what they needed to do, but they spent a lot of time in jail for doing that. And then when they started to introduce the welfare payments in our area, they called them RNIP payments, Relief for Needy Indian People. Even that name is just, brings about a little bit of I feel some kind of way about that. But, they put that in all the female's name, the mom's name. The houses went in the mom's name. And so then really effectively, where do our men fit? And, I speak about this all the time in our community that, we need our men. We need our men to step into their rightful places. And that means that we need to step into ours, as females and as and as two-spirit and non-binary and transgender, because there is place for all of us on that circle of support. We have to have those perspectives in order to see our way through.
Right.
And, it's hard as Indian women. We have been required to a lot of times be both mother and father, in our homes and in our lives. And so, there's a little bit of struggle there when our men start standing up, and it's like, okay, what do we do? How do we do this? But all I know is that we don't need another generation of men being told what to do by women.
No, I agree. I think it's really important that we do keep in mind, right, the ways in which, again, I'm gonna go back to the ways in which colonization really gripped this continent, right? Turtle Island. So if you kill the women, there's no babies, right? And if there's no babies, there's no future. And if there's no women and babies, there's a bunch of men with no almost like no motivation, right? There's no women, there's no babies. And then on top of that, you're going to compound it with the fact that, then the government starts to introduce substances, right? Alcohol, drugs, to numb the pain of losing the women and the babies, right? And so then you've got that whole aspect of it compounded. So it really was a strategically planned attack against our people on multiple levels, both emotional, physical, in terms of health. And so it's in order to combat that, it's got to be a holistic approach to fighting back against that entire situation, right? And I think you're right. I think that our men, there is a difference between being a strong-willed, right, opinionated Indigenous woman who knows who she is secure in herself, right, and can be that guide or that counsel for her partner, her brother, her father. And that is totally different than being a woman who barks orders at our men or looks down on our men or feels superior to our men. Because let me be clear, as women, we are fallible too. You know what I mean? We also have flaws and make mistakes and behave in ways that are not becoming of a Native woman, right? What we would consider to be appropriate behavior. And so I just want to make sure that that's really clear, because I think a lot of times, we get carried away with we're the matriarch, we're the woman, we do this, we're the backbone. Sure. Okay. But also understand that we are fallible. We make mistakes. We are not perfect. And when we are in a place that we trip up on something and we make a mistake, it is up to us and on our shoulders to own those mistakes and correct them,
And have that. I mean, I think always thinking about restorative justice and how we do that. And, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, the system doesn't allow for us to heal. And so we have to be able to have those conversations as women to women, as men to men, and then as everybody together, you know. And I even feel like, you know, our two-spirit, non-binary, our transgender, they have, you know, because we all understand each other's struggle, you know, women to women, two-spirit to two-spirit, and then we come together and we talk about that. We talk about how we include everybody, how everyone is a gift, right? We're a sacred creation, and we have to be able to figure that out. You know, I'm looking in the chat too, and I'm seeing a lot of things around, you know, how do we, not to just completely change the subject, but like, how do we prepare? You know, how do we prepare our young women? How do we prepare ourselves? What are the signs that we look for? I think Oja was talking about that. You know, what are some of the things that we need to be on the lookout for when we're out in the world? You know?
Yeah, he made a good point with the public transportation or the ride sharing, right? Do you check the child lock on the door? Do you confirm on your phone that the car picking you up is the car that's been dispatched to pick you up? You know, little things like that that are really important that I think, I mean, I can, for myself, I can be honest and say sometimes I don't, you know, like I've gone traveling to places with friends or what have you, we'll call an Uber and the car pulls up and says, I'm your Uber, and we all just jump in the car. That's a horrible practice to have. You don't know if that's really the Uber that's been sent to come get you. But in the moment, you know, you're not thinking about that. So it is really important that we discuss, you know, the things that we need to be alert to and take notice of and you know, acts that we can practice that would lessen the probability or the chance that we would fall victim to some type of human trafficking, right?
Right. And it's in an instant, you know, and it's in places, it's in broad daylight. You know, that's the most insidious part of this, is that it's not just like, oh, don't go into dark places, you know, stay together. Like, of course, all of those things are, you know, basic keys to anybody's safety, right? You know, you just always want to be aware of your surroundings. But sometimes you're being stalked and you don't even know that you're being stalked. You know, there's technology has grown for people, you know, human traffickers, that's big business. It's a lot of money. And because the laws are set up the way that they are, and we talk about this, you know, in MMIW, and I just want to say, when we say MMIW, we are inclusive of all of those groups because we're all at risk, right? All of our Indigenous people are at risk. But we really want to, you know, just make sure that when the technology is out there to like track us, you know, put things on our vehicles, drop things in our purse. I mean, they can easily drop things in our drinks, like things like that, that make us really vulnerable and easy to track.
Right.
You know, and those are scary things. Those are scary things to think about.
You know, and what's really unfortunate too is that a lot of times women will become aware that they've been targeted, right? And no one pays attention. I've seen videos on TikTok of women who are like, listen, this and this and this has been happening, you know. So I came home yesterday and my back door was creaked open, or I came home 2 days ago and my dog was barking like crazy at someone that was in the bushes in my backyard. And people hear that and their first thought, their impulse is to say, this person's nuts, right? This person's crazy. And a lot of times, you know, these women will go to law enforcement, they'll go to community organizations, they'll try to voice that they feel that something is off intuitively, right? As women, we have that intuition. We have that feeling of this is not right. Like something is off here, you know? And it's important that we listen to that. That's there for a reason. That's a gift that we're given for a reason. So when we feel that, it's important that we take notice of it and that we listen to that. But again, like a lot of these women are on here saying, if something happens to me, listen, I've reached out to law enforcement, I've reached out to this community organization, I've tried to tell people. And again, here we go with the disposable Native woman, right? No one listens. No one listens. And so what happens? Inevitably, at some point, something terrible happens, that person disappears, and then after the fact, everyone's like, oh, well, I didn't think she was serious. I didn't think it was anything, to be worried about. Meanwhile, this poor person has 50 video threads saying that, she's noticing something is wrong. So I think that more than anything, I think first and foremost is that when someone feels that something is off, do not disregard them.
Exactly.
Listen and try to figure it out, get to the bottom of it, something, right? But blowing it off as something that's in their head, man, I would hate to have that on my conscience. I
Yep.
would hate to be the person that someone came to and said, listen, I feel something's off. I think someone's targeting me, for human trafficking. I've had this happen. And I go, oh, you're nuts. You're nuts. That's nothing. And then something happens and I have to sit with that
Right.
forever.
Right.
So I would just say, like, if someone comes to you, do not disregard, really listen, pay attention, try to find a resolution somehow, let other people know. That way, at least it didn't stop with you. You know what I mean?
Yep. And oftentimes there are safety groups or helper groups in your communities, and trying to find out who those organizations are, who those people are, making connections with them and networks with them, so that when you are approached with somebody, whether they're in your community or not, you have a resource, a network of resources around you to help that individual, and the other thing, like when we believe people, right? We believe people is what we're saying, but we also need to remember we have to trust our intuition as well. If you feel like something is off, like you said, then something is off.
Yeah.
And so how do we, what are the first steps? I mean, I think I saw a couple of things in the chat from Oja and a couple of the other, the people that are watching. If we can call law enforcement, obviously that's like the obvious choice. And we know that 9 times out of 10, they're going to blow us off, but there's a record there, right, of that call. So you make that call, you just keep calling, you have to be diligent. And it's so irritating that we have to be loud about that stuff. It should be taken seriously off the jump, but it's not. And then, we need to make sure that our families are well informed.
You're going robotic on me again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. It's probably my bronchitis. Is just a quick check-in with the people that are watching. Is our sound coming through okay?
Huh. I hear you. It's just like robotic. And I'm looking at the comments, but no one's commenting anything.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm the only one that hears like the robot voice.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Resilient says it sounds clear. So maybe it's just
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, guys. Just trying to make sure that we're not,
yeah,
making it more difficult.
But absolutely, I think that it's really important to like you said, listen to that intuition, take note of your surroundings, like who's around you. Are there cars that you don't recognize in your neighborhood that you've never seen before? Like, are you starting to see the same car, in a specific place all the time? Like, there's definitely things that we can do, right, to become more aware of our surroundings. And I also think, like, I was looking in the comments and a lot of folks are saying, self-defense classes,
Yep.
Learning how to protect yourself. And it's really sad, right? It's sad to think that that's what we have to do as women, as mothers. My daughter walks home from school every day. It's just really unfortunate that that's what we have to do to keep our kids safe. But I do agree that, like, learning some type of self-defense is really beneficial. It would be an asset because, if you end up within the grasp of a predator, you could potentially have what you need in terms of tools to, release yourself from that person or get away from that person. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and I just remember, like, as you were talking, I was remembering my dad when we were little kids. And he would wrestle with us all the time, right? He would wrestle with us, and he was teaching us how to fight. And he would say, as we got older, he would say, now all these things that we've been doing, like all the wrestling and all the, fight moves and stuff, those are for you, because you're going to need that one day. And I didn't really get it, because he didn't really explain it too much until we were much later. And, I had an incident, and he said, well, did you do what I taught you? And I said, yeah, I did. And he got knocked out.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have to use some humor, because this is like ridiculous.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
We know
so
that.
In other words,
medicine,
Jen, you put his ass to sleep, is what you're saying.
Yep. But I think, I can see people in here in the chat really talking about some of the things that we can do. So the self-defense, being, you have to be vigilant. You have to be aware of your surroundings. You got to be constantly scanning. It's like being a driver on a new road. You have to look around. You don't know what's going to be, if there's deer jumping out of the bushes or what. So you have to really be on your toes, especially when you're in, a new place. But that doesn't say that we're always safe in our home spaces either.
Right.
Because there are people that come in and out of our communities. There are people that unfortunately live within our communities that are perpetrators. And so we need to watch out for that as well. And I think, as sisters, we just really try to not ever leave anybody behind.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
You just don't leave people by themselves. That's when bad things happen.
Right. Absolutely right. And I may end up getting pushback for this, but I own firearms. Like, I have firearms in my house. I own knives. I have pepper spray, because I take my safety seriously, and I take my children's safety seriously. You know what I mean? I live with my 2 kids, and if someone were to come into this house, I need to be able to make sure that myself and my children are safe,
Yep.
So, regardless of how other people feel about owning firearms or having weapons like that, like, for myself, it's really peace of mind, because if you know how to, handle them appropriately and safely, then they're really a tool to keep you safe, as opposed to a tool or something that could harm you, right?
Right. But again, I think we saw in the comments too, like, it's practice. Owning a gun is a big responsibility. And I think that's, that's definitely a choice, that people can make for themselves. But make sure you're a responsible gun owner, get trained and practice shooting. Because if you just have a gun and you don't know how to use it, it's like any other weapon. If you don't know how to use a knife, if you don't know how to use pepper spray, if you don't know how to use any of the things that, like, I've seen these really cool self-defense keychains, but if you don't practice with those things, you don't take time to get to know them and feel what it's like, then when the time comes, if the time comes, and unfortunately and hopefully it doesn't, those weapons are gonna be turned on you.
Right.
And so you just really have to make sure that you're prepared. And I think that's what the message of the night is like, being prepared.
Absolutely. Oja, a 12 gauge is hard to argue with.
Yeah.
So is a Glock, baby. So is a Glock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. Listen, it's a real heavy topic, and it's painful. It's painful as a people, as Native people, both women and men. Our people have been through so much, right? Just this targeted genocide, the violence against our women, our children, like, just the whole range of different abuses, right? That we've been through so much, and sometimes it's really hard to see the other side, right? It's hard to kind of look beyond all that pain and that darkness and say, well, there's a better tomorrow, right? Where there's something else out there that's farther than just beyond that darkness. There's light again. And I think that with our organizations, with the Women's Council and with the Intertribal Men's Society, Warrior Society, that's really what we're trying to build, right?
Right.
We're trying to make the statement that beyond all that darkness, just beyond that pain, right? There is a place that we can get to where we are a safe, happy, healthy, fulfilled people, you know,
Right.
and that is really what motivates me, right, with this council and coming together on a weekly basis to talk about things, put plans in action. Because as much as talking is amazing and therapeutic and wonderful and cathartic, right, talking isn't going to get things done. So it
Right.
may educate, but also having that action mode behind the discussion and really putting pen to paper and figuring out what we need to change at local and state levels to create this, you know, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, this utopic society that I envision for Indigenous people. Am I
Yeah.
totally off? Is that ever going to happen? Maybe it won't be a utopia, right? But at least a place where our people live in a way that is consistent with the dignity and the pride that we have, that our ancestors have given us, right? So that's my hope for this, for all of our conversations, for every time that we gather, right? It's always with the end result being some type of change for our communities.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're adding to that. We're adding to that collective consciousness around this because there are so many, you know, there are so many organizations out there. And I just really encourage people to look in your area and reach out to them as a just one of those direct action items is to really look in your area, find out where the resources are, who the resources are, if there's anything in your community or state or region that talks about MMIW. And, you know, again, we always say, write your legislature, use your voice.
Yeah.
You know, just set, it makes it, they make it really easy now. You can email, you can tweet, you can, you know, send Facebook messages, like all forms of communication, uplifting and amplifying Indigenous issues is always going to be really important, especially at that level, even though we know politics is, you know, it's an interesting state of being, but they are the ones that are making the laws at this point. And so how do we affect that change? Talking with our own tribal councils about how we affect that change and how we make people safe in our community. You know, we reach out and we continue those connections, and it's really incredibly important. And a lot of times we need to start in our own communities.
Yeah.
So that you be the pebble in the pond, right? And it ripples out, and that will ripple out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, you know, I think one of the things that because the work that I've done in our community has always been culturally based. It's always been spiritually based. And people are craving that. They really are craving that. And we get back to our teachings, we get back to our customs and our practices, our sacred medicines, our sacred ceremonies. You know, we think about who that is and who we are as Indigenous people.
Right.
It's incredibly important for us to remember that because we are resilient, you know, because we've had to be.
Yeah.
But we also have systems that have worked for us and worked for us for thousands of years. Clan systems. I think I saw in the chat somebody was talking about the Bear Clan, and that's true for Anishinaabe people. The Bear Clan were the protectors of the community, and they always patrolled just outside the community to make sure everybody was safe. And in that way, they also became very well versed in the medicines, the medicinal plants of that area and for the community. And so they're also the keepers of the medicine. So looking at that, trying to maybe bring back our clan systems in a way that makes sense for us so that everybody feels a place of belonging. You know, in this other mainstream society, it's like, just go figure it out.
Right.
Go try things and figure it out. And there's really not a lot of like encouragement, and there's not a lot of like, come back to your community, you know, and come back here and help us, you know. So when we're reaching out to our youth, and I think with any of the issues that we talk about, MMIW, protecting the water, you know, residential schools and CPS Indian child welfare, all of those things. We need to be including our youth in those conversations so that they understand what it is that they're going to be up against. And then
Yeah.
again, like we had said, leaving that roadmap for them, this love letter, to say, hey, this is what we went through and this is how we're trying to get through it. We're looking at specific MMIW stuff, like find out what's going on in your state. Find out who the people are that are sitting on the councils or the committees, the helper organizations, and see what you can do. See where they're at. What are their direct action? And, hopefully we get to a place where we'll be able to make a lot of those same recommendations and support people as well. But really, in the meantime, build your networks. Find out who are the safe people, who are the protectors, and,
Mm-hmm.
just get out there and do what you can,
Yeah. Sorry, I was reading a comment. Yeah, no, I've said this quite a few times, that a lot of times people want to get involved, right? And they want to get started in activism, or they feel like they're complacent, right? And that they're not doing anything. And people get discouraged because oftentimes they're like, well, I can't just pick up and travel across the country and be at the front line of the Enbridge pipeline, like line 3, line 5, or they'll say I can't travel to DC and go march on the Capitol. But I think it's important, and you mentioned it just a bit ago, it's important that they know that that's not necessary.
No.
There's so many things you can do from your home, from your local area, that would really affect change. Like, find out what laws are on the books, what legislation, what bills are coming up to be voted on, who those pieces of legislation and those bills, who they affect, right? Who do they benefit? Who do they not benefit? Get involved with your closest MMIW organization and find out how you can be of service to them. Work in a soup kitchen around where you live. Just, there's a whole multitude of things that people can do to uplift our Indigenous communities, right? Our Native family members, our Native kids, our Native brothers and sisters. That does not require you to get on a plane and travel across the country and potentially miss work or not be able to take care of your children. You can do things that are beneficial to your people, that advance the movement. Read and learn everything you can about sovereignty and why that's so important for our people. All kinds of different things that you can do from the comfort of your own home.
Right. And where you don't have to spend a lot of, like you said, money and even time. It's not as much time as when you're doing it from the comfort of your home. I mean, that's the beauty of some of the technology that we have right now, even though it can be a double-edged sword, and I would also say for those individuals who, are allies that aren't members of the Indigenous community, but want to help, I, again, reach out to those places, try to find somebody from a local tribe and make a connection, but you have to come in a good way. We always say, and I know people are like, well, I've heard allies say, like, when we say it's a tobacco question, well, what does that mean? That means that you come with an intention of really, truly helping. And so you have to listen, right? And you're going to hear some things and you take your lead from those Indigenous people, and you protect them. If you're standing on the line and there are police there, you get in front of those Indigenous people, because those Indigenous people are less likely to get out of the system than a non-Indigenous person.
Absolutely. They're also more likely to get a beating than a non-Indigenous person.
Exactly. And so when we're protesting these things, we're protesting like, why do we have so many missing and murdered Indigenous women? Why is this an issue? Why are there hotspots? Why is there a trafficking highway that is well known amongst law enforcement and nothing is being done about it?
Yeah.
Why are we not investing in infrastructure to assist? To make those human trafficking pipelines get shut down? And it's unfortunately the seedy underbelly of that is it's all about money. and it gets really tied back into these political arguments. And we know that the 1% is the one who is making the rules and the policies and the legislation, because they have the money to lobby and they have the money to buy and sell people, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And that is why it's so important that we organize. That is why this organization, this council is so important. That's why our men's society is so important, because the more people that we get involved, the more people that come to the table with and end up being educated on all of these, this whole myriad of different issues, right? Um, the more people that we have, that's more pressure on these legislative bodies that can affect changes in those areas.
Right.
These legislative bodies, all they care about is a vote and a paycheck. So if there are ways that we can affect either one of those things, they're going to listen. So that's why I think it's imperative that our people organize, get educated, that they really look into the issues that are afflicting and affecting their community so that they can get involved in ways to solve them.
Exactly, exactly. And, there is a place for everyone at the table for this. As reconnecting, we talk about that word reconnecting, we're all reconnecting because we are trying to find our true purpose. We're trying to find out who it is that we are and what we're supposed to be doing,
Right.
and that's our soul's journey. And the things that we do and the experiences that we have help lead us closer and closer to that true purpose.
Right.
We have our teachings that we hold strong, and I know that some people are separated from their communities, or they are feeling ostracized by their communities as well. I mean, that's something that I've struggled with just in my little community. We have two tribes. I'm a member of one. I kind of grew up and worked and lived in the other one. And so it's like you have to pick a side. Why do we have to pick a side? We're all Ojibwe.
Yeah.
We're actually Ojibwe under the 1854 treaty. We just separated after, and maintained federal recognition. But those are some of the the barriers, I guess, that people experience, and you just keep your good intention, you keep moving forward, you find people that you're going to connect with, and that may be more of a struggle for some than others. But again, those places that are within your your city, your county, your state, your region, that have resources and are willing to train volunteers or help you take direct action, or write your legislature, whatever it is, that is a journey in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, a big part of also, kind of continuing to remain focused on these issues and staying whole, right? Um, During this fight and all this activism is to be led by prayer. I don't know if we've said it officially on here, but we are a prayer-led, spiritually based organization, um, that really leans and relies heavily on our sacred medicines, our teachings, right?
Yeah.
Um, so actually, that's probably a good segue for the second half of what we want to talk about tonight. And
Right.
that is, what we've been seeing a lot online in terms of publicizing those those ceremonies, right? Those very sacred, spiritual kind of ceremonies and practices that we have. For example, as a Mescalero Apache woman, our sunrise ceremonies, our coming of age ceremonies for our young girls are highly, highly sacred and respected. Our crown dancers are super sacred and are not to be just paraded around, right? So seeing these things online it's it's disturbing to me on multiple levels. But Jen, why don't you talk to me a little bit about like some of the spiritual practices that you guys that you know, in your tribal nation practice, and how you hold those close to yourselves as well.
Right. I mean, so, we talk about like our sacred medicines, we talk about our teachings, and there's, one of the things that before we start publicly talking about those things, you need permission. You need permission from the teacher that you work with, from your elders. Sometimes that can be difficult because our elders fall on both sides of the lines of that. That's part of, how we're trying to come through this colonization, how we're trying to decolonize our world. But the way that I was taught, I was taught by many different teachers, but one specifically, her name is Doreen Day. She's an Indigenous midwife, and we talk about what we can share with families, what we can invite them to. We don't publicize our ceremonies. We don't video our ceremonies. We don't take pictures of our ceremonies. Basically, what happens in ceremony stays in ceremony, unless there's some sort of, and I hate to say this, but, unless there's some sort of abuse happening, and then you need to be able to watch yourself as well, because there are predators in the spiritual world. I mean, that's just a fact that we have to deal with. That's human nature.
Yeah.
It happens across the board. It's not just Indigenous communities. I mean, we all know about the churches and different things that happen, and how religious cults get started and people get under a spell, right?
Absolutely.
My one friend would always say, people say to put tobacco down by your sacred articles. She's like, I put tobacco down by myself, because I'm a sacred creation and I want to protect myself, and so we use those medicines. I mean, we can talk about those because they're universally known. They're plants of this natural world. Talk about tobacco, sweetgrass, sage. For Anishinaabe, those are 4 sacred medicines. I think that's, again, pretty universal. I know they use different things, but when it comes to our specific ceremonies, we have different naming ceremonies. We have coming of age ceremonies. We have healing ceremonies. We have, all different things. We have sweat lodges, things like that. But we can talk about them in general terms, but we don't talk about what goes on inside those ceremonies unless it's with another person who was there with you, or you're talking with your teacher or your elder, who's sharing that. And one of the things that I want to just talk about is like, why is that? Because I get that question a lot. Like, why can't everybody just know?
Yeah.
There's a history of that. There is a history. First and foremost, again, we always come with humility. We come in that good way, and we're seeking that healing, that knowledge, that support. We're seeking something. And so we always come in that, again, that good way. We're coming with our tobacco. My one of my elders said, if you want to live this life, you better have gifts. Like, get your gifts together.
Yep.
So you think about gifts for people who, do these ceremonies, who give their time, they give of themselves selflessly. They're putting themselves in, almost like, I don't want to say harm's way, but in a way they are putting themselves in harm's way, because people bring all kinds of things into those ceremonies, and they're well trained to be able to deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's part of the closed practice, when we think about the original teachings, right, is keeping those things sacred and making sure that they're protected. Another thing is that we were killed. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things is that we were killed for practicing our religious, what they call religious or deemed religious ceremonies. Mm-hmm. They were illegal, and they were illegal until 1978 when Carter signed in the Freedom of Indian Religion Act. Mm-hmm. And so that's not that long ago. That's the year after I was born. And so, and then we think about, okay, so it's not like 1978 and everybody was out having a good time doing all their ceremonies. No, that's still scary. People were taken. Our children were taken. And so that is a real big thing to have to come through and to process and feel safe. And there were societies that were created to hold sacred and hold and protect those sacred teachings, those sacred medicines, and those ceremonies. And sometimes it's really difficult to get them to be on board with allowing like what they would say quote unquote outsiders. I don't like that word, but people that have not been raised in ceremony like that, to let them in. It can be difficult. But I think it's really important to understand the history of why those things are closed. There's the sacredness of it. You know, we have to recognize that those sacred teachings, we have to recognize those sacred medicines, because if we use them improperly or with ill will, we're not using them in a loving way, in a respectful way, that can create something that is going to come back onto us that could make us sick. Either sick in mind, sick in our body, sick in our spirit, you know. So we just need to be careful. And when we are broadcasting, and I've seen some of those videos, when we're broadcasting out those sacred ceremonies, you don't know who's watching that and what their intention is. And did you get permission from everybody at that ceremony to broadcast their experience?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I couldn't agree more. And if I could speak on it a little, so I agree that my perspective on it is that we were gifted these practices, right? Our ancestors have been practicing spirituality and prayer and ceremony in these ways for hundreds of years. And it trickled down to us. It was a gift that was given to us. And I'm not as diplomatic. I'm not as diplomatic as you are, sister. Bless you. Some stuff just ain't for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like other communities, it's okay if you feel left out. You'll be all right. You're gonna be all right. Like, it's not for you. Yes, it is. You know, it is a huge kind of thing. The whole idea, or the whole historical attachment about being persecuted and killed for practicing our ceremonies, to now have them like paraded around social media, it's really quite offensive.
Yes.
And I know that you said, one of the most important things is permission. And I always like to say, listen, just because you get permission to do something doesn't mean it's something you should be doing.
Right.
And that I've seen some of these videos that people put out about, just with our young girls. And we believe, at least for my people, we believe that you can attach bad medicine to people and practices. If you're gawking eyes at a ceremony that you don't understand because it's not part of your people or your culture, I mean, unbeknownst to you, you are attaching like judgmental, critical energy to those practices. And not only that, but I am of the firm belief that our people, our ancestors, they harvested our medicines in very specific ways.
Right.
They harvested our medicines in prayer. They harvested our medicines with just reverence, right, for Mother Earth. They harvested our medicines with a sense of connection to the land, and they never took anything without leaving something.
Right.
It's like
I just want to jump in really quick. When we're that gathering and that harvesting of medicines, that's a ceremony.
Yes.
We always come into that again with our asema, our tobacco, and we ask for, guidance, and we thank that plant, our brother and our sister. We thank them because we know we are of the land, and we give that, we pay that homage to them. We say, "Miigwech," and we Kawashin, help me to help myself.
Yes.
And these are the medicines,
much like we do with elders council. Like, if we go seek counsel from our elders, we don't show up empty handed.
Right.
You show up with tobacco, you show up with a gift, you're giving something for something that is earned knowledge that you are taking away from that space with that elder. So back to our medicines, because our people harvest those in such a sacred, specific, spiritual way. When you purchase these medicines from things like Etsy or Amazon, right?
Right.
When they're not being harvested in those ways, those medicines are then void of any spirits, ancestors, strength, power that you get from the process of harvesting that medicine in the ancestral way. And I want to put that out there with the hopes that that would discourage some folks that are out there purchasing white sage from these Etsy stores,
Right.
because the whole purpose of harvesting our medicines is because we are unifying with our ancestors. We
Right.
are becoming a part of the footprints that they left, right? We are walking in their footprints. We are with them. We are communing with them. When we harvest our medicines, we are giving something to Mother Earth back because we're taking, we are grateful to the plants that are going to be used in ceremony. So there's so much that goes into harvesting our medicines that just buying it on Etsy or Amazon really just voids the entire sanctity and sacredness of that medicine.
Exactly. And one of the other things that I think people need to understand is when you're in that ceremony of harvesting, you're communing with your brother and your sister, right? You're communing with that plant. And so you know that it's coming directly of the earth, of our mother. It's a gift from her. And so when you're purchasing, from these sites, like you said, Etsy and Amazon, eBay, whatever you have, how many people have touched that medicine before it gets to you?
Right.
They've all put their intentions and who they are, whether they knowingly are doing it or not, because they're handling that sacred plant. And they're selling it for a purpose, right? They're selling it for some sort of spiritual purpose. And that's something that, you have to be extremely careful about. There are places that you can, because not everything is readily available for folks. There are places that are, native owned, indigenous owned. They operate in a good way, and you can look for that. But what I would encourage people to do more, and I think I saw a Tulsa woman in here talking about how she's been protecting and practicing and holding the knowledge around their sacred medicines in her community. Mm-hmm. So a lot of tribal communities will have a community garden. And one of the things that they do is they will give seeds, they will give plants, and we just really encourage people to plant their own medicine garden, because that is a healing ceremony in and of itself. To plant that plant, to nurture it, to give it who you are, and have that reciprocity between you and that sacred plant.
Right.
That's really important. And, not everybody can do that, but there are a lot of times community garden plots where you can carve out a little space for yourself and you plant those medicines. That is really a healing process. And I think when we worked with Indigenous families who were expecting, that was one of the things that we helped them do. And it was something that we saw and is still continuing, is that we see even in the housing, and they have these little bitty plots of land and not a lot of place to do things. You can see these medicine gardens outside their homes, and it really just warms my heart when I see that, because people are taking those teachings and they're understanding how important it is, and they're showing their kids how we are and how we live in reciprocity with the natural world.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times that whole idea, right? That whole process so with any relationship you have, whether it's your partner, your child, your parent, your food, you know what I mean? Any
Right.
relationship that you have that nourishes you in some way, there is those have to be nurtured. The same goes with our medicines, because not only do we care for those plants, right? But those plants care for us. And so
Right.
there is that relationship that needs to be nurtured between ourselves and our sacred medicines. And I think that too many people kind of skip over that entire process, right? They go straight to just the sage stick or the smudge bundle, right? And they walk around their house with it. And I I'm not going to dictate how people should smudge, because everybody has their own way to do it. But there are certain things that when I smudge, I am sure that I do or do not do, right? And
Right.
I'm just saying that, like, when we are in that moment, in that ceremony, when we are cleansing ourselves, when I wash myself with my smudge, with my sage smoke, right? And I'm focusing on the areas that I especially need blessings on. Um, you know, I, it's a whole emotional and spiritual, like, process that you go through. And so I think it's really, really, really important that we put the message out there that blindly lighting a smudge stick and walking around your house, blowing on it, right, to get the air everywhere, you're not doing what that medicine is intended to do, I guess,
Right.
is what I'm saying.
Right. That's exactly right. And that, I mean, I think, and that's the concern, when we're out, where we see these things that are broadcast on social media or shared on social media that, are intended to be real sacred. That's, that just becomes a real problem for folks.
Yeah.
The thing that probably irritates me, I guess, the most is, here we are, these marginalized communities, a marginalized population, and then from the quote unquote dominant society, they're picking and choosing these romanticized parts of who we are. They're appropriating them.
Right.
And they're, in that way, they're cheapening that. And so, that leads into that whole, like, romanticized idea, the stereotypes around Native Americans. You're either this, sacred medicine person, or you're a fall down drunk.
Right.
And that's not it. We're all of those things, in our own ways. And, we always say this, we're not a monolith.
Right.
And we don't subscribe to just one way. We don't fit into those stereotypes. Those stereotypes have been developed to show the dominant society, the mainstream culture, these really small pictures into the life of who we are without the knowledge and understanding of why.
Right.
And even our own communities and people in our own communities don't necessarily understand why. So it's really great to be able to reach out to folks and share teachings, share, experiences, that whole reach one, teach one, all of that, and trying to spread that awareness, because that's the problem, and then when we call people out, and we're not calling people out from like a place of hate or anger. We're calling people out and asking them respectfully, please don't do that.
Yeah.
We're coming from love. We're coming from care, and we're coming from concern and compassion. There's reasons why, and you need to talk with the elders in your community, the spiritual leaders, and ask them why we don't do those things, why they aren't held out for show.
Right.
And I think people maybe from outside Indigenous communities think like powwows are the thing, right? Powwows are the sacred thing that they can participate in, but a powwow is a gathering and a celebration of life.
Yep.
It's not a ceremony. There can be ceremonies that are attached to powwows, but they aren't open for everybody.
Exactly.
And I think that's confusing, but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It is. Well, and even with powwows, there's etiquette. You know what I mean? So it's not even like it's a powwow is like a free for all. Where no, like
No.
there's etiquette around our ceremonies.
Yep.
And I know that a lot of non-native folks feel like we're policing or gatekeeping these things. And frankly, you're absolutely right. We are. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, because there are things that need to be policed and gate kept in terms of who has access to them, you know. Um, but like I said, even with powwows, there's etiquette and things that you do and things that you don't do, things that are appropriate and things that are not appropriate to do, during a powwow, during grand entry, during all these different parts of a powwow, right?
Right.
And also, oh, I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about the powwow. What else was I gonna say? It was like right there, and then it like just disappeared, and I forgot what it was.
That's okay. That's okay.
But
I,
when
but
you're
yeah, no,
old,
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. In talking about, how powwows, there is an etiquette. There's certain things that happen that people need to understand, and that's why there's an MC.
right?
That's why somebody is there kind of directing things and making sure that there's an arena director who's
Hmm.
making sure those things are taken care of, and that there isn't, we really just don't, we don't just like go into that with, it's not a party,
No,
you
right.
know,
That's
it's,
where I was going. You just jogged my memory. Yeah, you just jogged my memory. That's where I was going. So yeah, it's not a party. And like I don't know if you saw the video that somebody posted about their first experience in a sweat lodge. And
I was really like nervous
oh
and sad watching that.
yeah, I wanted to throw my phone. I was like, how, who, what, there's certain things that you just don't do. If you knew how sacred a sweat lodge is, how important, how spiritual, how connecting a sweat lodge is in terms of our ancestors and our spirits and our healing journeys, right?
Right.
And it doesn't stop there. So, another thing that really bothers me is that I've seen a lot of folks, especially lately with our residential schools and the babies, all of our native babies that have been discovered and unearthed in these mass graves, right, at these different residential school sites. And I've seen a lot of folks go to these school sites to pay quote unquote their respects, but they're videotaping, or they come and they're very performative and like, look where I am. And that is really really frustrating for me, because if you're going to go somewhere and you're going to go to a place of deep trauma, I think Lakota, I don't know if many of you know that Lakota just went out to Wounded Knee, I think over the weekend with his son. Now, Wounded Knee is land that was drenched in the blood of Native people.
Yep.
You know what I mean? This is hallowed ground. This is ground that saw trauma and death and despair and pain. And so he goes out there with his son, and this is a solemn place. This is a place for respect. This
Right.
is a place where you go and you sit with your ancestors and you acknowledge your family, your relatives that perished there, that are still standing next to you, that walk with you, right, on a daily basis. It's not a place where you pull your phone out and you pose and you smile for the camera and look at me, look where I am. That kind of behavior is very off putting. And
Yes.
it speaks so much louder than your words of "I'm here out of respect." Because you
Exactly.
can say that you're there in the spirit of respect and in the spirit of honoring the fallen in those places. But when your actions show that you're like on TikTok and you're recording a video or taking photographs, that's so much louder than you just saying, "I'm here out of respect," right? Uh-oh, did we lose Jen? Did we lose? Hey guys, can you hear me? Or am I the one that's gone?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Did you
I'm
lose me?
here. I was on mute and I was talking out hard.
And I'm like, where'd Jen go?
But yeah, absolutely. To what you were saying is those things are really sacred, and the people that are conducting those ceremonies know the right way to conduct them so that everybody is kept safe. I mean, that's like a big part of this too. I mean, we've all heard the horror stories about, the sweat lodge that killed people. Like, that's the last thing that we are looking for in a healing ceremony, and I get concerned for people who enter into those things lightly, because they're seeking out something. They are looking for something. But if you're really coming in a good way, you will respect it. You will keep your experience for yourself, because that's what you're there for. You're there for yourself to heal. And that's not something that we broadcast, that we talk about later. And I think in that video that we saw on TikTok with that girl talking about it, and sharing her experience and putting up some pictures, you can just see the lack of knowledge that's there around that ceremony. And it's not to, she did what she did, and that's fine, but it's not for clout. We're not here posting this out and saying, oh, I went to this ceremony, I went to that ceremony. You'll see me sometimes say like that I went to ceremony, and talk about like it was really needed. We really appreciated everybody that came and participated.
Yes.
But it's not something that you share out like, oh, here's what it looks like and this is what we did. And that's just a really sacred time, and it's for the participants who were there.
Exactly. Yeah. When you go to ceremony and you share a little bit, you speak in generalities, not in specific, just specifics in terms of, step by step everything that happened. You know what I mean? That's just not how that works. So,
Exactly.
I just would ask everybody to be mindful of that, right? And when you see these things come across, I'm not asking you all to get in fights with people on TikTok, right, that are posting all this stuff, because A, you don't have that kind of time, believe you me, and B, it probably wouldn't matter. Like, I've addressed a couple of folks that have posted things, and I've expressed my discontent with the fact that they're posting these practices. Have they stopped posting the practices? No. So really, I mean, you can share you can share your discontent with it. It doesn't mean that it's going to change. And at the end of the day, it's them and a creator, and them and their ancestors that they're going to have to, that they're going to have to kind of make amends with, or reconcile all of that with. And so just don't make your own self, your own life bad medicine because you're addressing other people. But yeah, so listen, I always love sharing this space with my sisters and talking about these issues that are so important to our communities. I kind of want to put a call out there though. We are looking for more members for
Yes.
this women's council. We've got a secretary seat open on our governing board. We've got some other, chairs open. So really, basically what I'm saying is this. I'm looking for good. We're all as a council looking for good, intelligent, you know, activists like women that want to get involved, that, really want to have a hand in changing things for our people. And I'm going to be transparent. It is going to be a time commitment for whoever decides to become involved, because we have meetings just for us, for the governing board. We have our, we prep for our Monday night streams. We have joint meetings with the Men's Warrior Society. So it is a time commitment. And
Yeah.
I just want to stress that. So I have gotten a few ladies that have inboxed me the last few days and have said, I'm interested. How can I get involved? I think I've given my cell phone out like 5 or 6 times today to talk to people, to talk to some of these ladies that are interested. We are about action. We are about legislation. We are about education. We're about making charitable moves within our communities and providing hubs and programs for our kids and our parents, right?
Yeah.
Between the knowledge that Jen has, right, and the knowledge that Jacqueline, our PR person, our amazing other governing board member who took the night off. I think she was extra sleepy today. We've got a group of really JoJo. We've got a group of really, really intelligent, amazing Native women. And I'd like to grow that group. We've got a lot of work to do. And so we need a good group of women that are willing to do the work, that are willing to get in there and commit to getting things done and commit their time to the cause and the causes plural that this organization is going to take on, right?
Right.
So with that said, if anybody is interested in being a part of Woven with Resilience Native Women's Council, this is your cordial invitation to reach out to me. Reach out to me or reach out to Jen. You can reach out to Scarlet Morningstar as well on TikTok. She's my vice chair. Send us an email. We can talk. Obviously, there'll be a vetting process just because, we want to make sure that everyone is walking in a good way and has the appropriate intentions in terms of serving on this council. But we're looking. So if you're interested, please don't hesitate to hit my inbox. I will give you my phone number so we can chat outside of TikTok. You can always send Jen a message on TikTok as well. It's up to her whether she decides to share a cell phone number with you. Y'all might be communicating through Proton mail, but that's all right.
I will. I'm not on much social media, but I don't mind, sharing and talking, and I don't mind sharing my cell phone. It is what it is. We're trying to look, for good women to join this group. This came at a time in my life when I was really feeling I was feeling that call to action on many different fronts. I had been pretty sick with a bad lung infection for a couple of years, and I took some time off from doing some of this work. And I just really feel like this has been something that's been just so beneficial and helpful. And I believe, I believe in us. I believe in the mission. I believe in our vision. And I believe in who we are and what we're trying to do. This is about, really uplifting Indigenous voices, Indigenous women's voices, Indigenous men's voices, Indigenous two-spirit, non-binary, and our transgender people who give us so many blessings, to be able to open up and have these real conversations and not adhere to these social constructs that keep us separate.
Yes.
And that's like a huge thing. We can break those. Those are man-made. They do not hold as much water and integrity as our original teachings, which is to love everybody. That's the original teaching, in the way that I was taught. I did want to address WHAM times three. I asked a question about some closed practice and stuff. She's saying, or they're saying, what's your verdict on ceremonial stuff shared in books? Not in detail, but mentioned or hinted. I've been reading books by natives and just curious. So, I mean, I think that's like, if they're, you know, coming from a good place, you know, if it's really truly an Indigenous author, they're not probably going to share a whole lot in there. They might allude to it, you know, just mention, like you said, hint at like a ceremony or whatever. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but if you're looking at a book that's giving a prescription for a ceremony or detailing the process of a ceremony, that is to be, I think that's suspect, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I think it's important to keep in mind that if it is a true Indigenous author, right, then they know the importance of, you know, keeping the sanctity of these practices. So if they hint, again, if they speak in generalities, you know, it's like a very general description of excuse me, what that ceremony is. I think that's completely appropriate and fine. If it's a
Right.
step-by-step instruction manual on how to, you know, how to participate in a sweat, or how to, you know, put tobacco down, or how to burn sweet grass, like, you know what I mean? If they're trying to give you a step 1, step 2, step 3, that is highly suspect, and I would keep it pushing. I would not take, you know, that author seriously.
Right.
So the last I read mentioned.
I just wanted to put our TikTok @ in the chat, and I just want to make sure that I have yours right. It's Apache_Auntie78, correct?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
that's me. Correct.
I'm just adding that to the chat because I see a couple people who have said like they'd like to be involved, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, listen, I'm more than excited. I'm really, really excited about the work that's ahead of us.
Yeah.
And I know people aren't generally excited about work, but I'm really excited about this work, you know, and I think that what gives us an advantage, there are a lot of warrior societies out there. There are a lot of women's councils out there.
Yes.
I don't know of many women's councils and warrior societies who are working in conjunction with each other as counterparts, separate entities, same goals, like completely affiliated. Like I've never seen that before, and I could be wrong. I'm sure they're out there. I've just never been exposed to them. So I think that gives us an advantage because
Right.
we have the entire circle here. We have our men and we have our women. And I also want to address, you know, there was some comments going on earlier today about about our council self-proclaiming, you know, proclaiming ourselves the matriarch council of all of Turtle Island. I just want to be quite clear that that is not the case. We are not the matriarch council of all of Turtle Island.
Oh my
We are
goodness.
not the matriarch council of all of the US, Canada, and Alaska. Okay. We are a group of women who are going to be working collaboratively with a group of Native men to really make change within our communities in every possible way you can imagine within our reach, right?
Right. And we're not trying to, you know, lessen anybody else that is doing this work. We are trying to
Right.
add to the conversation. We are trying to add to the positive progress. We are trying to add our skill set to the you know, the collective, the conscious collective. And that's important. We need to be able to use our voice. And it's unfortunate that sometimes, you know, people want to try to tear that down. That really speaks to some of the crabs in a bucket style, you know, things that happen in our communities. And I'm hoping that through this we can talk about those things. We can talk about how we, you know, we've been taught to tear each other down.
Yeah.
And that's just not who we are as Indigenous people. You know, that alone is a tool, a weapon, call it what you will, of colonization and assimilation. They have made it so that we can't even trust ourselves.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
that's not what we're doing here. We're not trying to take away. We're not trying to make comment on any organization that already is existing. We are going to be as helpful and collaborative and network with everybody out there that we can. You know, we have a specific, where there's might be some specific focuses that we have. We might partner with other entities. But as we start this, you know, we need the good people of, you know, Turtle Island to help us, to uplift us. You know, we're coming in a humble, compassionate way. We are not coming with like we have all the answers, like we have a magic wand, because believe you me, if I had a magic wand, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, we're just really out here trying to think about and raise awareness and increase the consciousness around Indigenous issues, and not trying to make it, you know, this romanticized version, not trying to follow any stereotypes, just really trying to practice what we talk, you know, and put it into action where we can.
Yes.
And it's a collective, and we are inclusive. We invite everyone. These conversations are so important. And so I just, you know, when you come across those people, I made, you know, I made a TikTok about it one time because I was really struggling with some things that were going on in my personal life, and I get angry like real quick, you know. That's just kind of one of those things that happens. It's just like right to the rage.
No wonder I was just like, she's always trying to beat me up.
I know. And that's not true either. But I do, I mean, that tends to be my go-to, and I know that's from my own trauma, from my own, you know, things that I've done in my life. And that is a gut reaction, you know. But when I take a minute and I pause, I really truly remember the teachings of, you know, the people that I've grown up with and that have helped me to come along this path. And that is to just pray for them, because pray for them to get everything that they need to be happy, healthy, and safe. Because people that are happy, healthy, and safe will contribute. They will participate in a positive way. They will uplift. They will empower. And that is what we're looking for. We're not here to like point fingers, get on these little, like, you know, whatever it is. You know, I just feel like we need to rise above the noise.
Yes.
That's again, I just say, like, that's the opposite spirit trying to deter us from doing what we want to do and how we want to do it. And that's too bad. You know, that's too bad for them. And we're just going to keep moving forward. And
absolutely.
And it's so funny because I see a lot of times people having disputes on social media, specifically TikTok. And it's like, you know, if we sat down and talked, we'd probably find that we have way more in common.
Yeah.
These are misunderstandings because they're one-sided videos where people are trying to get their points across, and they're not actually having conversations with each other where there's a back and forth reciprocity.
Right. You know, and I have to say, like, the gentleman that was, you know, causing the issue earlier, or I don't want to say he was causing the issue, but the gentleman involved in, you know, the conflict a little earlier, you know, I have to give it to him. He apologized. He said, "I'm sorry for my words. I'm sorry for my elders' words," you know, and that's it. And that's all I needed. And I didn't continue. We didn't continue the interaction. We didn't continue the debate. We didn't continue the argument. Like, that's fine. That's it. We're good. Like, I'm done. You're done. There's no reason to continue the discussion. Right.
Right.
And it's, I think that, like you said, the purpose here, our purpose is so much bigger than these TikTok back and forth. It's just so much bigger. And Oja and I were talking about it earlier about, like, he's he's very passionate about the work that he's doing with the Warrior Society. He loves the men that he has on his council. He handpicked them himself. He's so proud of the moves that they're making right now.
Right.
And so him too. He's not about this divisiveness. Like, he's like, I don't want to be attached to any kind of, I don't ever want anyone to misconstrue my actions or my messages as being divisive, because that's not what I'm here to do, And he made a really good point. He's like, listen, our communities, they need us. They're depending on us. They see that we're starting to move in these directions, right? We're starting to really organize and lay plans for the future out and address some of these issues that we've had to deal with for such a long time, and the fact that they're seeing us collaborate and really get these things in order, it's providing hope. It's providing hope to our communities, and we don't want anything to derail that. We don't want anything to kind of take away from that hope, from that belief that they have in us as organizations, and even not as organizations, as relatives, right? As relatives, as a safe place for them to come if they need to talk about something, if they need a resource for something, So I just want to put that out there, and I want to remind everybody here that we love you, that if you are interested in participating either with our Women's Council or with the Men's Warrior Society, if you're interested in getting involved with the Men's Warrior Society, you could definitely get in contact with Oja, and he can, fill you in on their vetting process for that. Ladies, if you're interested in becoming a part of working closely with or participating with our Women's Council, please hit me in my inbox on TikTok, or hit Jen Scarlet Morningstar on TikTok, and let her know that you're interested, and we can set up a time to discuss. But I think we're going to wrap, and I think what I want you all to remember is that you are the living and breathing representation of our ancestors, of all of our ancestors. So walk in a good way. Remember who you are. Remember who you come from. Remember who you represent. Rise above any of that like crazy, unnecessary, unproductive garbage, right? And remember who you are and where you come from, because you're of this land. Your people, your ancestors are of this land. Their teachings have survived hundreds of years. Remember that. Remember, when you're walking your day-to-day life, remember that your ancestors' teachings are alive inside of you.
Yes.
I love you guys all. Jen, if you want to.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just echo what Maya is saying. And, we come with compassion. We come with love. We come with respect. We come with humility, generosity, with truth and honesty, with bravery and wisdom. And that is how we fight these evils, because they are insidious, and
Yes.
we cannot win on that plane that they operate on. And those teachings of love and respect and generosity and humility, those teachings are how creation was made. And so it is the oldest teaching. And that is who we are. We come from the stars. That is in our blood. That is in who we are. That's how we talk. That's how we walk. That's what we do. And it's who we are as souls, and it's who we are as human beings having this spiritual experience on this earth. And so we always remember that our ancestors gave their life for us. Our grandmothers are helping us along the way. All of our ancestral grandmothers. You call them in and you ask for their help in a good way, and they will be there, and they will help to guide us and to guide you. And we just wish you peace. We wish you love. And we hope that wherever you go, you are happy, healthy, and safe. And I don't know, Maya, I know that we said we were going to do an MMIW spotlight. I could not pull that up because I'm not a Facebook user. I tried multiple times to look for it.
Yeah.
I could maybe spotlight another one.
We could, or if you want to, we can put it on the agenda for Monday, because I know today, listen guys, listen, we do our darndest, our very best to get here and make this work. You should have heard me on the phone with Jen on the way to get here. I was literally driving with 5 minutes before we were going live, trying to get home from work. So it can get a little chaotic, but you know what? That's okay. That's okay, because I look forward to every Monday sitting on this panel with my sister and my other sisters and all of you guys that join us every Monday. So I hope to see you all again on Monday. We will definitely have our MMIW spotlight on Monday. So until then, please take care of yourselves. We love you. Have a good night. And yeah, I'm going to call it. What do you think?
All right, I think so. Miigwech, everybody. I just, again, be good to yourself. I put this in the chat. I'm under Maya because I snuck in under her account today. She told me I could do whatever I want. And I said, "Oh,
That's
really?"
Right. Do whatever you want within reason, sister, within reason.
Yeah. I said, I just, again, we just want to share that. Be good to yourself and treat yourselves like someone you love.
Absolutely.
Because you are so worth it, and you deserve every happiness in this world. So please be safe out there, and we'll see you again next Monday, and hopefully I'll be better and I'll be able to be live.
Ajo, everyone. Ajo, we love you, and we'll see you next week. I am getting out of here.
All right.